I believe that we finished with Peter's denial. You Yes, I just wanted you to note one thing, which I believe is very telling detail. Uh, uh, that is the Lord's look at Peter in Luke. It's only in Luke that we find this detail, that there was a kind of a eye contact. And, you know, the impression that all four Gospels give is that, you know, Peter's denial was self-conscious. Just someone, asked him, and he didn't pay that much attention. It seems, the impression that I have, it's not, that kind of a fear, but I'm just bystander here. I came to see. I came to see what's going on. In Luke, there's one interesting detail. When we're talking about Luke, the chapter is 22, and verses are 59 and 61. And after an interval of about an hour, still another insisted, saying, "Certainly this man also was with him, for he is a Galilean." But Peter said, "Man, I don't know what you are saying." Also in Luke, also, entropy, kind of man, it's just, he snapped off him, you know. So, but the fact is that he particularly insisted on his uh, faithfulness to the end. We're talking about Peter's denial in Luke. And in this sense, John gives us kind of little prehistory in the chapter 13, when in the beginning of his discourse and Last Supper kind of discourse, he bids farewell with them. And he says, "Where I'm going, it's interesting, as I told to the Jews before, where I'm going, you cannot follow me." And if you remember, I don't have it at hand with me, but you can find it. It's in John in chapter 13. And Peter, all right.
It's verse 63.
Okay, Olga had it. Yeah, it's 13, actually 38. When Jesus said, uh, and Peter was astonished by this saying that, you cannot follow me where I'm going. So he also understands it horizontally. So, "Oh, I follow you wherever you go, even to the death, to your death." And then Jesus answered, "Will you lay down your life for me?" But that is repetition, by the way, in John. So first of all, he said to his disciples, let me take, sorry, I'll, I'll take another Bible. Just bear with me for a second. Yeah, it's 33, 35. Richard, do you have it with you? Maybe you'll read it for us. That's end of this chapter 13 in John, from 33 to 38.
But I only have the King James Bible, so maybe Mary will do that.
But Mary, can you do it? You're here. All right. It's
Okay. Little children, yet a little while, and I am with you. You will seek me, and as I said to the Jews, so now I say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you, that you also love one another. But by this all men will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, where are you going? Jesus answered, where I am going, you cannot follow me now, but you shall follow afterward. Peter said to him, Lord, why cannot I follow you now? I will lay down my life for you. Jesus answered, you will lay down your life for me? Truly, truly, I say to you, the cock will not crow till you have denied me 3 times.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, in John, this point is being repeated again and again. First of all, Jesus says to this company called Jews in him that where I'm going in chapter, I believe 8, you cannot follow me. And, you know, and these people were thinking about it and talking about them, between themselves. What does he mean by that? Now it's repeated right in front of the disciples. And then Peter's reacted on it. Then later on, in chapter 14 in John, again, when Jesus speaks that don't be troubled, don't be afraid. In my Father's house there are many mansions and so on and so forth. And then, if not, I'll go prepare a place for you. I'll come, I'll pick you up, that you'll be maybe where I am. And you know where I'm going. And then Thomas asks him, we don't know where you're going. So, and how can we know the way? So, it is totally misunderstood by either the Jews or the disciples. What does he mean by that? And it takes place during the Passover celebration evening. They have no idea what's going to happen. And in the same time, Judah left. In John, it is underlined that Jesus pointed at him, to the beloved disciple, with a morsel of bread, and he walked into the night, but no one else understands what's going to happen during this very night. So neither does Peter. So, but he had this experience in the garden when he cuts the ear of a servant of high priest. And in Luke, only in Luke, it is recorded that Jesus healed this ear. Also, in all of them, all of the synoptics, he says, put down your sword. So, Peter somehow goes all the way according to his own words. So he's ready to fight. He's ready to fight for the teacher, for Jesus. And then he's arrested, and Peter follows the way. John gives us somehow more detailed account how he got there into the garden of high priest. It is through John, because John has some connections there. So first of all, he was led inside. And apparently, no danger was there for him particularly. The girl at the door just is impressed. You know, he's a big man and so on and so forth. He's visible, and particularly his accent. So, are you Galilean? He's no, no, don't worry about it. So, and then two more questions follow. And look, and then he answers. And like, oh man, get out of me, I'm not. So he's not, it seems to me, he's not thinking too much about this. But in Luke, it's particularly telling, then he meets the eye of Jesus, his, who looks apparently from the window, being arrested or being even interrogated already. And then it comes upon him. Okay. And the Lord turned and looked at Peter. And Peter remembered the words of the Lord, who he had said to him. Before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. We're talking about it because all four evangelists record this Peter's abdication, so to say. It's all known, right? So, and it gives a lot of, kind of psychological insight of the situation. He's a friend of Jesus. Jesus stayed in his house whenever he was in Capernaum. He followed him. So Peter is a rock, so to say. And he denies. So Jesus is completely abandoned by all human followings, so to say. In John, we know that just, John is a witness. He's watching what's going on. He will be to the end, but his presence is so low key, so to say. He's very,
Well, you yourself said that he entered the courtyard of the high priest. I think it's quite a brave activity. It's not just an onlooker or a passive witness. It's pretty faithful.
okay.
So I don't understand why you make a distinction between the two of them. Peter was not the only one.
Yeah.
Now, I'd like to say a couple of things. First of all, about Peter's casualness in denying this. I think that's simply a tactic. I mean, I think he's terrified. But if he were adamant and screaming or something, saying, no, I don't know him, that would give him away. But if he acts as if he's casual, oh, I don't know, that is a tactic to hide the fact that he's terrified of being exposed as a disciple.
Yeah.
That's a very smart. I mean, it's like you see it in espionage and in wartime. You say, "Oh no, I'm not. I'm not one of the partisans." What are you talking about? As opposed to adamantly denying. That's a much better way of defending yourself, to be that casual. It doesn't mean that he was casual really inside. And the other thing is, it's not an important point, but it makes it look like the cock crows and Jesus looks at him. But I don't think it could have happened that way, because he was out in a courtyard. He wasn't in the high priest's house. And they were interrogating Jesus in the high priest's house, and this was outside in the courtyard. So I think the cock, okay, so he denies him, the cock crows, but then I think some time passed, maybe they were leading Jesus out or something like that. that Jesus then looked at him. I think there was a period of time, but in the story, in the narrative, for the sake of brevity, they squeeze it together.
Peter, there's only one problem with that. In Matthew, he actually does scream and yell and blaspheme and swear and pronounce and denies him very vehemently.
Hmm.
So what I have a feeling that including the variants that all of this may be, is that we see it from very different points of view. We could see it as a tactic from the outside. We could see it as an attempt to psychologize what's going on with him. In Matthew, it seems to me that it's chapter 26, verse 74. It seems that it's seen from the perspective of Peter's own conscience. It's neither psychological nor tactical. But it introduces a very interesting thing about comparing and contrasting the four Gospels in general. The shift of the point of view in them depends not only on the one who gives the account, but on the subjective perspectives of the participants. You know, of course, you could say that I'm projecting my interest in Bakhtin and Dostoevsky and whatnot, but I think that it's a fascinating notion that we suddenly see what's happening to Peter in Matthew through his own soul. That he, objectively speaking, for the outsiders, he might not have yelled and screamed and denied very loudly, but that's how it feels to him. So it seems to me that one of the shifts, and not only between John and the synoptics, but between all four of them, could be examined from that point of view.
But we're not contradicting what I said.
No, not at all. It's just
Yeah,
occurred
we're
to
saying the
me.
same thing. Yeah.
What I'm trying to say, I'm not trying to contradict you. I'm trying to explain the seeming apparent contradictions among the Gospels themselves.
Yes, I think he was if you could say, he was screaming inside.
Exactly.
But
I mean, I
but
don't
not
know.
outwardly. Yeah.
At least that's the explanation that feels probable to me, because
Yeah.
the shifts into his own conscience happen at different points. For example, Luke signals it with Christ's own gaze. We know that when God looks at you, that's your conscience operative. We know it even from the story of the Garden of Eden. That's why they run away. But it seems to me that this would be interesting to check, not only here, but in general. It's an interesting parameter of checking the variances among the Gospels, because we are approaching it from the point of view of who accounts for what. That means the four evangelists or their background. But it just occurred to me that there may be some difference there. I mean, we know from the tradition, whatever it's worth, Father Michael is rather Protestant in that respect. But from the tradition, we know more or less that Luke is known as an artist. Apart from the fact that he is a healer, he's an artist. That means that his symbolism for shifting into the perspective of the character in question from their conscience perspective could be very visual. And that's what's happening here. We know it from iconography too, that when Peter denies Christ, the most piercing moment visually is Christ looking back at him. So it's presented, if you will, you know, you're an actor, so you can imagine that it's a stage situation. You have to symbolize one's conscience by the interactions. And it seems to me that that's how Luke does it, which may confirm the fact that he indeed is very visual about his description. But his description itself is still about Peter's conscience.
Yes.
May I just turn your attention to Mark, because it is believed well in the tradition that Mark was he was that we know from Peter's, from Paul's epistles, from the book of Acts, that Mark finally followed Peter and stayed with him, and he was considerably younger. So, and it is believed also that Mark's gospel, partly it's, informed by Peter. And look how it is said in Mark, which also Matthew maybe repeats or maybe has the same tradition, at least, the same information about it. And I'll read it from Mark for you. It's 69. It is 14, chapter 69, verse 69. And the maid saw him and began again to say to the bystanders, the same maid, by the way, this man is one of them. But again, he denied it. And after a little while, again, the bystanders said to Peter, certainly you are one of them, for you are Galilean, for you are a Galilean. But he began to invoke a curse on himself and to answer. That's about what Olga just mentioned, referring to Matthew. I do not know this man of whom you speak. Then immediately the cock crowed a second time. And Peter remembered how Jesus had said to him, before the cock crows twice, you will deny me 3 times. Yes. And then look in this particular, when we say how it's possible, do we know the disposition of this palace? There might be windows, we don't know. So, all kind of possibilities. You don't need to invent these things, it's probably some kind of life has more variants than our wildest imagination, as we know, from even our own experience. So,
But I think it's important not to talk about it's important to classify those variants in the accounts we are reading. And it seems to me that they depend on the degree to which the evangelist wants to see it from the internal point of view of Peter's conscience. Because it's not just that John or Luke abstain from anything else, but on the one hand, it characterizes Mark and Matthew that they get into Peter's conscience. But on the other hand, since we're reading Luke now, it's really important to account for why we have the detail of Christ looking back at Peter. And because of this comparison, it just occurred to me that it may be because Luke is very visual about his symbolism, that he indeed is an artist, that he can kind of seize a visual moment as symbolic. So it's, of course, you can dismiss it as just another variant, or life has many variants, etc. But it's too general. We are trying to understand why what each of the evangelists brings in. And he is not, as you said earlier, he tries to be conciliatory, he tries to kind of not get too much into blaming anybody, etc. But what he does is very powerful visually, how he gets into his character's conscience. Sorry. Okay, he creates very powerful pictures. And this is one of them. It's a scene, in which we can imagine ourselves participating. So on the one hand, he abstains from pronouncing any judgment on Peter, on the fact that he's too loud, that he denies things too secretively or tactically, as Peter Flaberg said. But I think that the most interesting and piercing thing is Luke itself, because reading him from the point of view of, claim a series of icons. Every scene, you can imagine Luke much more than anybody else having the gospel broken into symbolic scenes. And there is nothing more powerful visually about portraying anyone's conscience, but showing how Christ looks back at you. Because he does. It's just that to Luke, it appears in those terms. because he thinks visually. Since we are trying to see what's specific about him, I think it's an important detail.
Thank you. My point, which I wanted in the beginning to make, that is a feeling of complete abandonment by his companions. You know, in John, in the Last Supper discourse, Jesus says, "I'm not calling you servants and so something, but friends." And there's no more really friendships that is love among friends if one lay one's life for his friends. So that is what had happened just before, in this very night, when he addresses the 12, actually 11, without Judah. So Peter was present, obviously, and his own stand as a particular close friend to Jesus. So that, you know, they are disciples, they are friends, but Peter is a personal friend. So Jesus is abandoned. So it seems to me that, you know, all of them emphasizes things. You know, I'm talking from.
Jordan doesn't quite, because
May I
he,
just finish? May
he
I
kind
finish?
of sneaks.
Yeah, may I finish? Just my orthodox point of view. So our orthodox point of view is that Jesus is Son of Man and Son of God. So that's a God who became friend with human beings. You know, he entered into the friendship, and his personal friend Peter. So and what he says beforehand, I'm telling you, you will all abandon me, but I'm not alone. I'm with my Father. So when we come to the final scene of the final scenes of crucifixion, there will be one record only in Matthew, when Jesus cries, "Father, Father, why you have abandoned me? Lama, lama, samachvani." Obviously, we all know this. So what does it mean? You know, it's going through complete abandonment, first of all by man, and then by God himself. So, you know, that's a point that they did. It's a kenosis of the Son of God. And first of all, this kenosis already going on. And this Peter's denial, why it is recorded by all of them. You know, it's a human pain in your heart. You're arrested, you're spit upon. There's no help from anyone. And your personal friend who just said to you, you know, I'm going to go with you to the end. No, he said, you know, he kind of what had predicted happened. And then Jesus looked from this window. I you know, for me, it's a piercing detail that Luke brings. That's all. That's why I want you know, also to kind of consider it, and that's why all the discussions. If you don't want to say anything about later, we can go on.
Can I make a comment, though?
Absolutely.
What you're saying is absolutely right, but you are kind of washing it out because you're talking about what the Gospels have in common. But I think your original, what all four Gospels have in common here. But I thought that originally you actually asked a question of why this detail is mentioned only in Luke. And I think it's interesting that that's his way of conveying what you're talking about. All four of them do. But his very specific way of conveying it. And I think that when we try to compare and contrast the Gospels, it's very important to pay attention to specifics. It in no way disqualifies the piercing nature of this scene in all four of them, but they achieve it through different means. And that is why their detail can differ so much. So I think it's important not to wash out the importance of the switch of the facet of who does it how. And so far, it seems to me that the answer to your question of why you have this detail only in Luke It's very simply because he's an artist. And now we can move on.
Okay, thank you. So if no one else wants to comment, may we go on? Mary, 23. Let's say three first verses because they're kind of. Then
Then the whole company of them arose and brought him before Pilate, and they began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man perverting our nation and forbidding us to give tribute to Caesar, and saying that he himself is Christ, a king." And Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And he answered him, "You have said so."
okay, Luke shortens this account. In various, in others, there are more details on that. But Luke wants just to, go on, and particularly in a way, he's soft with Pilate. In which sense? It implies that Pilate knows the situation. There are some spies, obviously, that watch this rebellious nation. People who are always, ready to kind of to get ignited in some kind of rebellion. So, and obviously, Jesus is around for some time. He is followed by crowds. And obviously, in these crowds, those who kind of who informers. So he knows as this kind of preacher, it does not represent the direct threat to the Roman dominion. Therefore, it is very interesting because look, they said this man in Luke, I mean, talking. Saying that he's a king, he's a Christ, a king, already threatening thing for the empire, right? And Pilate very quickly asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jews answered right away, "You have said so." Yes, you're right. And the next reaction of Pilate is, said to the chief priests, and those who are with them, "I find no crime in him." So, and look, it says, why? He didn't go into this, in detailed investigation. What do you mean by that? He finds it in Mark, and in Matthew, in John. What about truth and so on and so forth? So the one who is for the truth understands my kingship. My kingship is not here. He does not even have a doubt that Jesus politically harmless. That's Luke's point. Luke is a Roman citizen, and he doesn't want to jeopardize the situation of Christians in the empire, which, as we know, will become very kind of uneasy very soon, or probably in his own time. We don't know how he end his life, by the way. Nothing is said about him. Tradition says that but though he's also the first history of the church, that's the only one in the beginning. We don't know how he ends his life, but he kind of, and look, and Pilate's. Okay, let's read a little bit more. Let's read now through Mary, through verse 12, the whole story, how kind of, because it's particularly Luke's account.
And Pilate said to the chief priests and the multitudes, I find no crime in this man. But they were urgent, saying, he stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea, from Galilee even to this place. When Pilate heard this, he asked whether the man was a Galilean. And when he learned that he belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him over to Herod, who was himself in Jerusalem at that time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad, for he had long desired to see him, because he had heard about him, and he was hoping to see some sign done by him. So he questioned him at some length, but he made no answer. The chief priests and the scribes stood by vehemently accusing him. And Herod with his soldiers treated him with contempt and mocked him. Then, arraying him in gorgeous apparel, he sent him back to Pilate. And Herod and Pilate became friends with each other that very day, for before this they had been at enmity with each other.
I think it's very, very telling scene. First of all, you know how you read this story. Pilate very quickly washed his hands. Oh, he's Galilean. It's not my jurisdiction. Herod is at hand. That's a Passover celebration. So the king of Galileans now in Jerusalem in his residence. Now, Jesus is sent there, followed, by the way, by high priests. You know, two of them in some kind of retinues. So they want to get it to the end, to their purpose. So they are vehemently against. So they want to carry out their verdict. Wait a second. So there will be again again the point that Pilate nevertheless had to make his final decision. But so far, Jesus is in front of Herod. And first of all, we remember from the previous accounts that Herod, very superstitious man, first when he heard about Jesus, he saw that it is John the Baptist, whom he beheaded, as it is emphasized in Mark, who raised from the dead. And the 4 miracles are made through him and by him. So Jesus already known by his signs and miracles. So the rumors around, probably his informers too there. But then they said, no, it's not John the Baptist. It's not the John the Baptist. Now, interesting that when we read in Luke, Jesus had his remarks about Herod. And he never remarks about anyone in this sense. To go, some Pharisees came to him and said, look, Herod is looking for your life. So remove yourself from Galilee. Just, hide yourself. Just go. And Jesus said, go and tell to this fox, that I'm preaching today and the third day I'll finish. So, and then he added, but the prophet must die in Jerusalem. Not
Father Michael, I have a question. I always get confused about which Herod is which.
This
who
is
was the same and who was different?
No, look, that's the son of Herod the Great. That's Herod Antipa.
Yeah, so who was in Judea and who was in Galilee?
In Judea, there was no Herod any longer. There was a governor of Judea appointed by Romans, because, as we remember, it is said in the previous things, but it was not discussed in the beginning, under Herod, after Herod's death, his son Amphilaus was inherited the Judea's kingdom, so to say, obviously under the Romans. But then the Jews, rebelled against him several times because of his bloody
Yeah,
killing
I
people.
understand. I just don't confuse me any further. Let me ask my question very clearly. The one who sent his retinue to Bethlehem at the time of nativity
Was
was
Herod the Great.
exactly, and he was in Herodian, which is in near Bethlehem, and which is actually in Judea. So, could you give me more or less the names and the dates so that I know who was when?
Herod died in year 4 of so-called New Year, after the birth of Jesus Christ.
Got it.
As his father. He had many children. His direct heirs were killed by him, 2 sons. There were kind of various children from various wives. So he killed 3 of them, Hephaestus and then Antipater, who kind of denounced his 2 older brothers, real heirs. Then he divided his, he divided probably according to Romans directives. So one of his sons became Amphilach. He was the king of Judea. Then he was removed. And Jews requested a Roman governor. A Roman governor since that time became the governor of Judea.
So what time, around what time?
It probably, I cannot tell you.
I just want to gauge it against Christ's own earthly life, because I get lost here.
When Jesus was active, there was already governor in Judea. And these governors were appointed until the Jewish rebellion in 70. Now, Herod Antipa was another son of Herod, who received Galilee in his possession. Then his brother Philip was the king of Syria, and another part which before were great Judean kingdom of Herod, because Herod was a kind of a powerful joiner of, he actually, Herod the Great actually achieved what only David in the old days had achieved, actually uniting a northern and southern part, Israel and Judea. And actually possession of Herod were even greater. That's why he was called Great. Herod the Great.
No, please don't confuse me. So Antipa was in Galilee,
Herod Antipa was in Galilee.
while in Jerusalem there was an appointed governor instead
Right.
of the Herodian dynasty. Okay.
That's and so now they are 2 met together in Jews. And it all right. Any other questions? Now this Herod,
And Antipa was the one who killed John and took Herodias as his wife from Philip. What did he do with Philip?
sorry,
What did he do with Philip?
nothing. He just
Oh, he just took away his wife. Okay. So
his-
he was not like David.
no, no,
He was a little bit better in that respect.
no. Philip was he kind of, yes, sure.
The little detail in this accusation of the high priest and the Jews.
Could you talk louder, Larissa, a little louder into microphone?
Right. The Jews accuse Jesus of not telling people to not pay taxes. And somehow Pilate just ignores it. It's very interesting because this is precisely something that he could have paid attention to. You know, what is it? Not paying taxes.
I just mentioned that he probably had his informers and he knows that it is just, that it is accusation, unfounded accusation. That's why in Luke, he said, but, I know, I'm supposed to know these things. I'm taking care of, of collecting from you guys. But it's not just, it's high priests and the people, they by all means, they wanted, but how can you get a person arrested and executed under Romans? Romans had the law only one thing. You're against this Roman state, and in a very painful way. You say people don't pay if you don't pay taxes. What you do? You have to rebel against against the government. Otherwise, they will force you to pay the taxes. That's how Americans started their revolution, by the way, from Romans. They say, no, we don't going to pay this some taxes for something. Not even general taxes, but some kind of taxes. That's how the American Revolution started. So all kind of imperial governments, first of all, what they want? They want to collect taxes, nothing else.
Father Michael, you had a wonderful Freudian slip right now. You have had many, but right now you said that's how the Americans started the revolution against the Romans. That was a very nice.
Britain, yeah, but obviously, Britain at part was a part of Roman Empire at one moment. It started like this. I have a book here, From Roman Province to British Empire, right there on the shelf. So my slip of tongues has some, reason for it. All right, I'm sorry about that. Now, what is interesting? Now he's in front of Herod. Herod wants to sign from him. There's a great magician in front of him. How they look at him? Look, show me something. Show me something. Jesus is silent. He doesn't answer. To some kind of humiliating little bit situation for Herod himself. No, not a word.
I don't know if it's humiliating to Herod. He just wants entertainment.
Yes, but
he's notorious for loving entertainment.
Yes, yes,
and doing all sorts of things for it.
Yes. By that time, while he was standing there silent, it said, chief priests and scribes stood by vehemently accusing him, even in front of Herod. It doesn't matter for them who is going to get away, get off Jesus. So either Pilate or Herod, they're accusing him. He doesn't pay too much attention to it. Herod has his own mind. Actually, he's known, Herodians, by the way, is known that they're known by pro-Romans even culturally. They don't have
They're hedonists and they would do anything for
yes,
them.
but this temple thing, it's another jurisdiction. It's not under him. He's a king after all. Though small province, it's you have to kind of realize these things. So actually, look, and Herod with soldiers treated him with contempt. That's all. Mocked him, arraying him in a gorgeous apparel. And Jesus already here like a lamb. They put apparel on him. He just stands there so silently. He's completely, he's giving himself to every situation, taking it silently. But situations differs. They're humiliating from sides of the powers. But who drives it to the end? High priest. High priest. High priest is, is getting to his final sacrifice. As, John illuminates us. Because he's high priest, he said that. So, and the Jews is a lamb. They don't speak these words in synoptics, but the meaning is the same. He behaves like that. Neither Roman power nor pro-Roman Galilean high power. That's where Jesus was active. Galilee and Judea, according to them. They would kind of tolerate his. This is a temple, high priests, temple's authority. And very often, we confuse with the word Jews, but it's temple's authority that run these things to the point. And it is it is under my emphasized here, underlined here. So they were right in front of the Pilate, they said to him, and and they will continue to do this. They were insistent on that. Jesus silent. He's accepted. Yes, I'm the king of the Jews. So you said that. Pilate accepted that. This kind of kingship, that's okay. About taxes, I'm supposed to know these things. It's under my control. Okay. He is in Galilean jurisdiction. Let him go to Herod. Now, interesting detail that he gives. And send him back to Pilate. And now, why this sentence? How do you understand it? And Herod and Pilate became friends with each other.
But Michael, before you move on, this is a very dramatic point, but just occurred to me that Luke mentions the gorgeous or bright apparels for Christ, but John and Matthew describe the flagellation in great detail, and then he's mocked as a king and is dressed in royal purple. So it is a bit different, but it's still the symbolism of the clothes. So it seems to me that both of the people who dress him up, Pilate or those who flog him, mean to humiliate him, but they actually do dress him as a king and a lamb, respectively. So it's the gesture again is very interesting. I also find it interesting that Luke ascribes it, he describes it not in relation to the flagellation, but to preparing Christ for sacrifice as a lamb, because it's a very interesting visual detail again. You correctly noticed the symbolism, but it doesn't mean that it's absent in the rest of them. It's just in a different spot. And I don't have any answer. I just think that it's a very interesting shift before we go into this kind of unholy union between Herod and Pilate. That's all.
Yeah. I cannot say anything. If you have something to say about it, please do. But they became friends with each other that very day. For before this, they had been an enmity with each other. So what this means, kind of, Luke obviously is not confrontational with authorities, but has his little irony about both of them. Both of this irony goes through, Luke's gospel many times, particularly when Jesus says about, tell these folks only thing that he said, and that he kind of refers to any authority. Actually, it's interesting that Jesus communicates only with Jewish authorities of the temple. I wouldn't say even Jewish authority of the temple and Pharisees. And as we know, in John and in Luke, Pharisees are undecided. The majority of them probably against, but we don't know even majority or active kind of minority, whatever. But there are details when Pharisees who followed him said, kind of get away from here because Herod wants to kill you. So you have a danger here. They kind of prevent him. So it is also kind of a shaky situation. But who is determined? That is the temple's authorities. And yes, and it also points what exactly Olga just mentioned here. There's a final sacrifice. All right. Yeah. Who else?
So if you asked a question, I would like to venture a possible answer. The question was, how come they get together and become friends, right? Did I understand the question right?
Yes, it's a kind of.
Okay, if that's the question, I would like to address it.
Okay, address it.
It seems to me that this is actually extremely relevant for today, because we have a very cynical, imperial, powerful ruler, and a very zealous but cowardly and hysterical head of the church. And they get together based on their joint persecution of Christ, which they take very cynically. They have nothing especially against him. It's just that they don't care. So this union of cynicism sounds extremely relevant for today's situation. Sapienti sat. I don't want to add anything.
Shakespearean, I would say.
No, I would say for today, right now. Let's bypass all of the intermediate stuff. For today, right now, we have an extremely cynical, tyrannical imperial ruler and an equally cynical head of the church. And they make an unholy union, not because they care, but because they're both equally cynical. But thereby, they condemn Christ to crucifixion kind of almost passively. And neither Herod nor Pilate are particularly legitimate from the point of view of the Jews. Pilate is not the emperor, and Herod is not the part of the Davidic dynasty. And neither of them, they're all kind of very highly positioned functionaries. Plus, of course, as you keep emphasizing, you have the high priests, especially Caiaphas. So I don't find anything more relevant for today in the Gospels than this particular union of the provincial versus the imperial power in order to commit an injustice out of cynicism. And they very easily co-opt the heads of the church.
Okay, if we come back to Luke and his picture, and we'll read just 3 verses and discuss them, and then we'll finish for today because I have an early train. Now, 13:16, please.
Okay.
Mary.
Pilate then called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was perverting the people. And after examining him before you, behold, I did not find this man guilty of any of your charges against him. Neither did Herod, for he sent him back to us. Behold, nothing deserving death has been done by him. I will therefore chastise him and release him."
I don't know why he's going to chastise him if he's not guilty, but I'll just give something for you. So it's already a little thing that I'm just leaving him. Now, that is how, by the way, Pilate summed up this visit of Jesus to Herod. And so in Luke, he's pretty kind of decisive that there's no crime whatsoever to get. Later, I believe next time already we'll continue with how the trial going on. But right now, that is the summing up of the investigation by Herod and by Pilate, and Pilate's resolution according to Luke. What you can comment on this?
Thank you.
Nothing more? No one else? Okay, then, dear friends. So, we go step by step because, we discussing these details, which are, I think, very, thank you. Goodbye. See some of you at the Vespers tonight, tomorrow.